computers, where learning gets easier, faster, and actually fun. Today, we're diving into something that trips a lot of students up, multiplying decimals. But don't worry, by the end of this video, you'll be solving these like a pro. So grab your notebooks and let's get multiplying. So what are decimals? Decimals are fractions whose denominator is a power of 10 and the numerator is expressed by figures placed to the right of the decimal point. So let's break this down a little bit. So meaning of a decimal point. Decimal number, my bad. This is the whole number. Now, this little tiny doll over here, that's known as the decimal point, which separates the whole number from the tens, thousands, hundreds, whatsoever. You are going to learn that in a bit when I explain it. And then these are known as the numerators, which is basically over here. It says expressed by figures placed to the right of a decimal point. So this is basically a breakthrough of the decimal number itself. And I'm going to give you a little bit of information on place values. Because if you are dealing with decimals, something really important to decimals is place values. Place values do hold a big impact on decimals. So let's break that through a little bit. I have two images here to represent that. Firstly, I'm going to be talking about this one. It is a number line that's representing decimals. As you can see that basically decimals are definitely used. Whether you're using it right now in this grade or whatever grade you are in, or in the future in upper level grades, decimals are always going to be there. Decimals are those numbers that are between a whole number and another whole number. And those numbers are very important at some moments, whether it be multiplying, like we're doing right now, or we're graphing or dividing or whatsoever you are doing with decimals. These are basically from, I'm talking about 2 to 3 perhaps, the numbers between them are these. These are the decimal numbers which are going to be counted in between of them. So if I'm saying, give me a number from in between of 2 to 3, you're going to say 2.5. That's a decimal. You don't realize when you're using decimals a lot, but actually you do, whether it be a real a life situation or just in mathematics. So the place values are counted from the decimal point. Going to the left, there are units, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, and so on. It just keeps on going. And going to the right, there are tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, and so on. So basically, it's the same thing again. It's very self-explanatory, actually. It's basically the place values are counted from the decimal point, which is this. This is the decimal point, right? So the ones over here are from tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, and so on. And from the left, it starts from ones, tens. Usually it just starts from tens, but sometimes there is a 0, so I would count that at a point. So just maybe put ones in there as well. If there's a 0, then that's basically ones. Ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s. Again, same thing. Exact same thing on both sides. Recap of how to multiply the whole numbers. In order to know how to multiply decimals, knowing how to multiply whole numbers is very necessary. So in order to multiply whole numbers, you just line up the numbers and multiply them. I am saying to line up them. I know some people don't anymore, but in order to know or understand how to multiply decimals, I feel like lining up whole numbers can be very helpful, because that's basically kind of how you multiply decimals. So to do it over here, you would do 4 times 3, right? You line it up into a straight line, and using your timetables and multiplication, we know that 4 times 3 is 12. And that's basically a recap of how to multiply whole numbers. How to multiply decimals. The example that we're going to be working with is 0.6 times 0.3. If you want to think of it in a different way, it's basically 6 over 10 times 3 over 10. But we are going to talk about 0.6 times 0.3 because we're talking about decimals over here. So let me just erase this so it doesn't really confuse you guys. Let's get started. So this is going to be a step-by-step process, which I follow and I recommend following as well. And teachers usually teach the same thing. Step by step. So first, ignore the decimals. I know it sounds weird, but please ignore the decimal points and just have it like 6 over 3. So suppose, firstly, I would say line them up. So 0.6 times 0.3. Forget about this for a second. Like, just forget about it. Like, forget about this. Forget this even exists right now. And just multiply 6 over 3 normally. So 6 over 3, we know that it equals 18. Now, count the numbers of the decimal places in the decimal point. So what I mean is that, let me erase this actually. What I really mean is that we did 0.6 times 0.3, right? And I said to forget about this. Now count how many places it is. Count the number of the decimal places in a decimal point. It's like this. After this, how many places does it move? Like, how many does it move in order to go, like, from here to here? How much? 1, right? So it's 1 for each. So that brings to a total of 2 decimal places. So 1 for this one, 1 for this one, and when you add these two, it equals 2. Then place the decimal point in the product such that the number of decimal places in the product and the original decimal number should be the same. So what I mean by that is to take the result. So we have 18 as our result, right? So 18, that's our result. Now, first step is that, and then move the decimal point 2 places to the left. So this is the right, you move 1 time and you move to a second time. If you want here, let me do it in a different color so you guys can see it more easily. Here's the point, right? Now I'm gonna move it 1 time. And now since I've, in the previous one, I've moved 2 times, there's 2 decimal points. 2 decimal places that I've moved. Now I'm going to move 1 more time, and this is where the point goes. So 18 basically becomes 0.18, and the final answer of 0.6 times 0.3 should be 0.18. Now, I would recommend these steps. However, there is an easier way, which is lining them up. So 0.6 times 0.3, right? Basically, what you do is kind of the same thing. It's actually the same thing. It will get you the same answer. But it's just lining them up. But you have to make sure that the decimal points are lined up straight. So these have to be lined up straight. They have to be over on each other. Even if it's like 0.6 and 0.03, it's okay. You'll put a 0 here. That's how you do it, because that's the only way you can get it. You can't actually, you have to line up the decimal points straight up. However, we're not going to worry about that right now, because that's not what we're talking about. But 0.6 times 0.3, you line them up, you line up the decimal points, and you just multiply it normally, like 6.3. 6 times 3, that's 18. Then you put the decimal point down and you carry out the 0. That's how I do it. But I did follow the steps. Technically, it's following the steps, except it doesn't tell you to line up. However, I would recommend line. Examples time. So we have our first example here with us, which is 0.8 times 0.009. So let's get started with it. First, we remove the decimal points and just imagine that they're not there to trouble us. And let's just multiply 8 times 0.09. This looks a little weird. Let me fix it a little bit so it looks better to you guys, and also just is structured better. Of course, right here. Lining up as always. 9 times 8 is 72, as we all know, and we just bring down the 2 zeros. And here is our whole number answer. Now we have to make it into a decimal. So let's count how many places there are of the decimals. So this is 1, as you can see, 1 plus how many over here? So it's 1, 2, 3. So 3. And we just add them and it's 4. So let's move this 4 to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4. Decimal point. Let me put that in a different color. So decimal point and then a 0. So this means that 0.8 times 0.0009 actually equals 0.0072. And this is our final answer. Now we have our next example here with us, which is 0.3 times 0.4. Pretty simple, actually. It's not that difficult. Again, we remove the decimal points for now. We just do 4 times 3, which gives you 12. And then again, we do how many times does this move? To the right, it's 1, and then this also moves 1 time, so 1 plus 1 equals 2. So we move this 2 times, 1, 2. And this is where our decimal point is, and our 0. So 0.3 times 0.4 actually equals 0.12. Now for this example, I want you guys to try first, so please pause the video over here and go on, try it out. Welcome back. I hope you guys did good. So let's do it together. 0.2 times 0.10. As usual, remove the decimal points. We do normally, so 2 times 10, which gives us 20. Now here it's moved 1 time, and over here it's moved 2 times. So that equals total of 3. So 1, 2, 3. Oh, there is an empty space over here. What do we do? Okay, I'm kidding. I'm just overreacting. For this empty space over here, we add another 0. Whenever if there's an empty space like this, you're always going to add a 0 over there. That is that for that place value. So for here right now, it's a 10th place value, and that's going to be a 0. So the final answer would be 0.2 times 0.10, which equals 0.020. And that's our final answer. Now let's move on to our fourth example. I also want you guys to try this out first and then do it together. So do pause the video over here to try it out. Welcome back. I hope you guys liked this one. It's actually pretty straightforward. So remove it again as usual. 8 times 4, which gives you 32. And again, how many place values? 1 and 1 over here, which gives you 2. So as you guys probably realize that it is getting easier because actually multiplying decimals is not hard. It's just like multiplying fractions, but just a little bit more steps. And that's actually it. That's just how multiplying decimal really works. It's just the amount of practice you need in order to make it easy for you. Of course, the numbers are a little shorter right now, but once it gets higher, you need to be really careful with the decimals and the decimal places, how many decimal places there are. However, let's go back to this example. So 0.4 times 0.8 equals 0.32. We have our next example here with us, which is actually a whole number times a decimal. So no worries, it's no big deal. It's actually kind of the same thing. So let's try it out. Again, we forget the decimal, so we just do 4 times 3, which gives you 12. Now we count the decimals. Of course, there is no decimal here. So 1, 2. So basically what we're going to do for this one is just we're going to do 1, 2. And here you go. This is where our decimal point will be. And we have a 0 here. So if there's a whole number, just make sure to remember that there's no decimal point. So we don't count any places for that decimal, for that number. However, there is a decimal, so count those places instead, and that's what you would move over here, if that makes sense. I hope it does. Next is 5 times 0.09. Same thing, it's a whole number times a decimal. No biggie. We can, of course, do this. It's very easy. This one has no place values. So no place values. I don't know why it's doing this. Place values. Remember that to keep that in mind. Now let's work anyways. So the whole number times a decimal. So 5 times 9 basically, which is 45. Now you're going to move how many it moves here. 1, 2. So it's going to be 2 times. So let's move it. 1, 2. And this is where a decimal point is going to be placed. And then another 0. So 5 times 0.09 equals 0.45. We have another example here with us, which is 0.3 0.02 times 0.3. So let's multiply again. Forget about the decimal points and do 2 times 3, which equals 6. Now let's see how many times you have to move it. For here, it's going to be 1, 2, so 2 plus 1. So 1 equals 3. So let me do this in a different color so it's easier for you guys to see. 1, 2, 3. So this is where our decimal point is going to be. And we do have empty spaces again. But for this empty spaces, you know what to do. You have to fill them up with something which is called a 0. So the answer for this would be 0. So 0 for the question 0.02 times 0.3, the answer is 0.06. Oops, my bad. 0.006. Don't do that mistake like I did. Here we have our last example for today's video, which is 9 times 0.02. So let's just do it. Remove the decimal point. We have nothing to remove over here. So just do 9 times 2, which equals 18. And move the decimal points 2 times because they moved 2 times on the top. So 1, 2, so this means that 9 times 0.02 equals 0.18. So this is just a recap of what we have talked throughout the video. So step 1 to multiplying decimals is to ignore the decimal points and the decimal and multiply the numbers like normal whole numbers. Then count how many digits are after the decimals in both numbers and move the decimal that many places back into your answer. And that's it. You've just mastered multiplying decimals. If you found this video helpful, make sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so you can never miss a math tip from Youth Tutors. Got a question or want more practice? Drop it in the comments. We love hearing from you guys. See you in the next video. And remember, math doesn't have to be hard, especially when we do it together. Bye-bye.